I know there are some of you that wonder, why don't you just go on a caloric deficit? Why don't you just eat better? And the quickest and shortest answer I have for anybody who asks this question is, I just can't do it. And I'm not saying that it doesn't work for everybody, but for me, during that time, even right now, it is not something that I can successfully do. Fasting, on the other hand, works for me. I've shown it before and I'm showing it now. And not only to lose the weight, but to keep the weight off as well. I've said this many times, but when it comes to weight loss, the diet part is the hardest part for me. I can exercise, I can fast, but when it comes to counting my calories and macro restricting, definitely hard, excruciatingly hard. And it doesn't mean that I haven't tried, and it doesn't mean that I haven't done this before and have had some success, because I have. I've tried to cut my calories, and in doing so, sure, I would lose some weight. I would maybe get down to around 200 pounds, sometimes 190, at my best around 180 pounds. But it was never sustainable. It became too difficult for me to keep or maintain or continue to lose the weight. Let's not forget, fasting has gotten me down to 125 pounds, currently where I'm at right now, around 140 pounds. And I'm able to keep this weight where it's at. I had to do something that was different, that was out of the norm, that was a little unorthodox of what other people do. And I have no shame and I have no guilt in saying that, because I did what worked for me. I stopped listening to what everybody was telling me to do. Cut your calories, eat 5 to 6 times a day, make sure you do X amount of cardio and X amount of this and that. Listen, at the time for me, it wasn't something that I could do. But I knew that fasting, I was good at fasting. I was successful at fasting, and the results speak for themselves. I lost 80 pounds in 142 days, and I didn't plateau once. Not once. On day 1, I weighed in at 217.8 pounds. Day 5, I was already 10 pounds down at 207.4. Day 13, Wonderland, 199.6 pounds. Day 19, 192, down 25 pounds. In 62 days, I was down 50 pounds at 167.4. And on March 26, 2024, I weighed in at 137.8 pounds, exactly 80 pounds down 142 days later. Why didn't I plateau? Because I fasted. I knew my fasting number. I knew that because I ate 5, 6, 7,000 calories per refeed that I couldn't do a 24-hour fast and expect to lose weight. I knew that because I ate 5, 6, 7,000 calories per refeed, I couldn't do a 48-hour fast and expect to lose weight. But I knew if I fasted for a minimum of 90 hours, I could still eat whatever I wanted during my refeed days and continue to lose weight. And that's precisely what I did. What do I mean by my fasting number? Essentially, my fasting number was the number that I had to fast for on minimum to continue to get the weight on the scale to move down. That is why I didn't plateau during those 142 days, because I knew for every 90-hour fast that I performed at minimum, with the way I exercised, with the way I slept, with the way I ate, that I would still continue to lose weight no matter what. And it proved to be true, but I did this through trial and error. This isn't something, I didn't pull this number out of my ass and just said, okay, do a 90-hour fast. This took time for me to realize, okay, 36-hour fasts aren't doing it, 45-hour fasts aren't doing it, but you know what? Every time I get around 90 hours or more, I will lose weight on the scale. And that's how I got there, based on how I ate, based on my exercise. And that's what you're gonna have to do if you wanna find out what your fasting number is. What minimum hours of fasting will get you to lose weight on the scale time and time again. But even if you figure that out, that doesn't really make much of a difference, because you have to still do it. And I'll tell you what, when I did all of those 90+ hour fasts in a row, that is not something that most people can do consecutively, back to back to back to back, for 5 months. It isn't. It's a very difficult thing to do. So while you might know what your fasting number is whenever that time comes, when you realize what that number is, yes, go ahead and implement that, but that is where imperfect consistency becomes very important. That's where these other levers of weight loss become very important. If you can't hit your fasting number, then you have to work on the diet. If you can't work on the diet, then you better get back to your fasting number. Yes, exercise still plays a big role, and I am such a huge proponent when it comes to strength training, especially lately, but the diet, the fasting, those are the two big keys, the big elements in making sure you're going to achieve weight loss, fat loss success. And I'm not taking anything away from strength training, because I am really starting to understand that muscle building, that gaining muscle makes such a difference. And I'm gonna remind you, 90 hours is my fasting number. That's my number. That isn't your number. Just because I fast for 90 hours doesn't mean that you should, because I eat 5, 6, 7,000 plus calories during a refeed. You probably are not. You're probably eating way less than I am. And what I mean by that is if you're not eating 5, 6, 7,000 calories per refeed, you probably don't have to fast for 90 hours. Sorry, my dryer's going off. Okay, it's done. But what this means is if you're really good at fasting and you can fast for 90 hours and you eat, let's say 2,000 calories, you are going to see a much bigger change on the scale than I have, even though I think it's pretty impressive to lose 80 pounds in 5 months. But it also means that you don't have to do a 90-hour fast. If you are able to do a 36, a 48, a 65, and you can eat less and you're still exercising and you're combining all of these things together and you're getting success and it feels good and it feels easy and you can do it, why not? But this is why imperfect consistency is so important, because you have to play around with these numbers when it comes to fasting. You have to play around these numbers when it comes to your diet. You have to play around with these numbers when it comes to your strength training or your cardio sessions. All of these things build together to give you success in weight loss. And not just weight loss, fat loss and building muscle. You have to do what works for you. And here we are, 6+ months later, over half a year later, and the weight is still off. Now, I really don't do 90+ hour fasts anymore. They're more 42 hours and 65-hour fasts. One, because I don't really need to lose any more weight, but two, because the way I eat, because my diet has changed and evolved over time, and so has my cardio and my strength training. I still lift at the gym, but heavier and harder, hitting new personal bests. Fasting will always be a part of maintaining my weight and losing weight if I need to. But right now, I don't really have a need to do a 90-hour fast, and I don't know if I see myself doing one in the foreseeable future. Maybe every now and then, but for now, 42-hour fasts and 65-hour fasts, they're pretty reasonable for me. And I do have to continue doing that because my diet is still not perfect. I don't think it'll ever be perfect, but that's okay. With the amount of food I eat, that's still changing over time. I've noticed it in the calories I consume. I've noticed it in the macros I take in. It's much different than it used to be. My diet has evolved in ways I thought it never would. At the same time, my exercise has as well. Yes, 1 hour walks 6 times a week is great. I love doing it. It's really leisurely. It's easy on my joints. I'm not stressing myself out like crazy, but when it comes to strength training, that is something that I am putting a lot of effort in the gym. I'm starting to realize how important it is to continue to lift heavier. I don't know, I guess in the same way, it's also fun to do. Even though I'm still around the same weight today than I was 6+ months ago when I hit my goal weight, I know aesthetically I look completely different. My clothes fit differently. I feel like I look broader. I feel like I am more muscular, or at least more lean. And in some ways, it's a little addicting to want to continue to get more gains and look better. And yes, there's a lot of vanity when it comes to this, but at the same time, I know I'm doing things to keep my health good, to keep my health markers in the green. And all of this in general is just really good for my mental health. It makes me realize I don't have to depend on food 24/7 for comfort, for boredom, for stress, when I'm sad, for anything like that. Yes, I will occasionally use food because obviously I don't eat every day, but I know that there are other things I can do in my life outside of eating that will give me fulfillment. But I didn't plateau on my weight loss journey 330 some days ago because I knew what my fasting number was. Don't get me wrong, doing 35, 90+ hour back-to-back consecutive fasts wasn't easy. Not to mention some of the 100+ hour fasts that I threw in there as well. You know this and I know this. I preach this all the time. I wholeheartedly believe in imperfect consistency. I also believe in giving yourself grace. But I also believe I had the discipline, the focus, the willpower to work my ass off those 138 days.